What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I wanted to show you how I care for my Thaumatophyllum Bipinnatifidum. Now, the common names are the tree philodendron, the lacy tree philodendron, the Selloum, the horsehead philodendron, and the comb leaf philodendron. In 2018, a group of scientists realized that these plants were genetically different from the philodendrons that they were originally grouped in with, hence the name Thaumatophyllum Bipinnatifidum. They used to be called Philodendron Bipinnatifidum, but they've regrouped them into the Thaumatophyllum Bipinnatifidum. For simplicity though, I'm going to be calling this plant the Selloum. That's mainly what I hear this plant called. But there is a difference between the Thaumatophyllum Bipinnatifidum and the Thaumatophyllum Xanadu. I believe that the Xanadu is a little bit smaller. It doesn't get as large as this one does. And there is also the Hope Selloum. And that one is kind of a smaller plant that doesn't really get as tall or as wide. These guys right here will actually get anywhere from about 10 to 15 feet tall and about 10 to 15 feet wide growing in nature. Now, typically they are found in South America, in the rainforest of that area. So to best help your plant actually thrive, it's going to benefit your plant if you can recreate its natural habitat as close as you can. And basically what this plant needs is a decent amount of sunlight, something that you would find kind of in the canopy of a tree. Established plants can take direct sunlight for a little bit, but not long. I think anywhere from about 2 or 3, maybe even 4 hours can be okay for an established plant. But younger ones certainly will bleach out and burn out. So you got to watch the fine line with the light. They also need a decent amount of water. They are quite heavy drinkers, and they need very high humidity as well. And then bundled in with all that, they need soil that drains really well also, because they usually do receive a whole lot of rain and water in nature. So they need basically a nutrient-rich soil that drains really fast and doesn't hold on to water all day. Now, a long time ago, I used to have one of these, and it got pretty big. Unfortunately, I did have to get rid of it whenever I moved. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was at Kroger, and I noticed that they had these for about $10. And then I went back a week later, and I saw that they had marked them down to about $7.99. So I thought, well, I really want another one. I will go ahead and purchase this one, and I'm glad I did. These leaves are beautiful and unique, and this plant is very easy to take care of. But that being said, I want to let you know that they are extremely toxic plants. You really shouldn't have this plant in your home if you have little ones running around or if you have pets, dogs, cats, horses, birds. So be very cautious if you have anything of that nature kind of walking around that likes to chew on things or put things in their mouth, because the sap that this thing produces is very toxic. Anytime you handle the plant, you really should be wearing gloves. And if not, you need to wash your hands directly after handling the plant, because it can cause some allergic reactions, and it will also make you very sick, and if you ingest enough, it probably could kill you. So be very careful with this plant. As I was saying earlier, to care for it, we really want to kind of focus on the light. These guys do really well under artificial grow lights, and that's what I have mine under. I've got him under the LEDs, and I leave that on from anywhere from about 10 to 12 hours a day, and he seems to be right at home with that. You can put him in a south-facing window, but I would definitely have some protection there, either curtains or blinds, something to kind of help beat back that sun so it's not directly shining down on the leaves and probably burning them. But they do like a decent amount of light. If you do have this plant in a low light situation, it will not thrive and it will not last too long. Very low light conditions promote rot with these guys. So if you don't have enough light, your plant will not be developing a whole bunch of new leaves, and it probably will start dropping a lot of leaves in order to cope with that low amount of light. As I said earlier, they need a decent amount of water. Again, that line is a very fine line. If you give your plant too much water, it will end up rotting and it will not thrive as well, but there is a very fine line. So you want to make sure that you're using your finger and stick it down in the soil, and if you can feel any moisture at all, I would hold off on watering your plant again. If it feels like the top 2 inches of the plant is dry, you could probably go ahead and water your plant. Now you'll want to take care and make sure that your pot that you have it in does have adequate drainage holes in there. As I always say, you want to water your plant that the excess actually drains freely away from the plant. And if you have a saucer underneath it, you need to empty that after about 20 minutes. If you leave all that water in there, it has nowhere to go, and the soil will remain really moist and saturated, and the roots will not be able to breathe, and they will die. Now, I still have this plant in the same container that I bought it in, and the bottom of this blue container actually is solid and does not have any drainage hole in it. Whenever I do water it, though, I will take him out and set the plant in the tub, and then let the excess drain down the drain before I put him back in his new container, which actually will not get rid of any of the water that's in there. I haven't had to repot him yet, but when I do, I'm going to use a soil that drains really well. Again, I always use the cacti and succulent soil because it has a lot of sand in it, but if you want to go ahead and mix up your own, you could use any kind of organic kind of compost mixed in with some pumice or perlite and some horticultural grade sand. Now I've recently started composting again, so I will be mixing in a couple of handfuls of some compost in here to actually help with the drainage also. But horticultural grade sand will actually help you out and not hold on to a bunch of water, and when water comes into contact with that sand, it will just kind of pass on by and drain out freely. So you really want to make sure that with this plant, it has really good draining soil in it. Again, in talking about the soil pH needs to be anywhere around 5.6 on up to 7.5. So they do like it slightly acidic on up to about neutral. If you water your plant regularly, you shouldn't need very high levels of humidity to go along with that. During the wintertime, however, you don't need to water your plant as often, so humidity really does kind of help it out. These plants really do enjoy high levels of humidity, anywhere from about 50 to 60% on up. I know a lot of people will go around and spritz their plant every once in a while, or use a pebble tray to help with the humidity, but I keep mine really close to the humidifier, and he absolutely loves it. Interesting enough, it takes these plants anywhere from 15 to 20 years to produce a flower. They need to be mature in order to start to flower, and when they are grown indoors, oftentimes they will never flower their entire lives. So just because you have one, do not expect yours to flower indoors. They need to have the right conditions met with humidity, water, soil, light, and then maybe, just maybe, yours may begin to flower one day. Usually the flowers are a white to cream color. They have the spathe kind of appearance that looks almost like a peace lily, and they're supposed to smell really good. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe they are nocturnal flowers, so you may have to stay up a little bit late in order to see yours open up. But they do smell really good. Now, when talking about fertilizer with this guy, if your plant receives a bunch of light, you need to go ahead and fertilize it regularly for your plant. Since a lot of light causes increased plant growth and productivity, it needs to have a decent amount of fertilizer to keep up with all that. I only feed mine, well, my older one that I used to have, I would only feed it once a month in the spring on up to the fall. So about late April, I would begin fertilizing it with an organic general all-purpose fertilizer, and I would dilute that by about half, and then I would stop feeding it around late August. I'm not sure if you're able to tell from this distance, but some of these leaves look like they have hot or hard water stains on them. These leaves are very showy and large, and as they get bigger, they are considered dust magnets. So you will have to go over your leaves every once in a while with a cleaning solution and a washcloth. Now typically the way I clean mine is with 1 part lemon juice to 4 parts warm water. Now that's warm water, not hot. You don't want to burn your leaves. And then you'll take a washcloth and go over the tops and the bottoms of the leaves. Now, after you've cleaned the leaves, you'll also want to kind of just look under them afterwards and make sure that you don't see anything that indicates that you may have some pests on your plant. Now, I suggest using a very bright flashlight, one on the back of your phone, and look over on the tops of the leaves and under them as well, but most of the pests kind of linger underneath the leaves. So you'll want to be on the lookout for any kind of filaments that may indicate that you may have spider mites, or any kind of aphids or kind of bugs or gnats that may be hanging onto your plant. Something that would indicate that you might have an infestation or that you may be getting an infestation soon. Fortunately, with all the pests that this guy faces, sticking your plant outside and spraying them off with a garden hose or in the bathtub with a detachable shower head will go ahead and knock a majority of the pests off. This plant does struggle some with scale, so if you do have scale, you may actually have to prune back the infected areas rather aggressively. Anything else you can kind of just knock off with a strong blast of water and wash it down the drain. Now, you may have to get some kind of chemical warfare going on depending on the severity of the case, but I always use neem oil to help me out in that situation because it is organic, and depending on how else or anything else that you may have a problem with, you may have to try some different things. Typically, these guys do not propagate as well as monsteras do, but I'm not saying that they don't. The cut leaves can last for a very long time in a glass of water. They can even last a couple of months. Maintaining that you actually empty the water out once a week and keep it fresh, these cut leaves can last a couple of months in a glass. If you start to notice that some leaves are dying, that is normal, especially the smaller leaves. A lot of times you can give them a little pull and they'll just kind of pull on off. But sometimes if you do, they may try to remain on the plant. And if so, you can just take a sharp pair of scissors that have been sanitized and cut them off as flush to the base as you can without actually nicking the plant. These plants are very durable and very hardy, and they can survive a rigorous pruning. They can be kept outdoors. The USDA says that zones 9 through 11 are perfect for this plant, and they are pretty capable of putting up with strong battering winds. So if you do have a plant that seems to have a problem with strong winds, this plant may be right for that situation. Now, as the plant gets older, you'll notice that there will be a woody stem in the middle that it starts to appear. As it does get older, the bottom leaves will fall off from that stem, and it will give the appearance of squid-like tentacles, and there's nothing you can do about that because it will drop all of its bottom leaves and normally just kind of keep the leaves up in the crown. And if you find that your plant gets way too large for you or the growing space that it's in, just prune them back. Well guys, that's really all I wanted to say on this plant. Like I said, it is a great plant to have, but be careful because the plant is extremely toxic. If you have any kind of questions or concerns, please leave that in the comment section and let me know if you've ever had any kind of success or failures with this plant. While you're at it, don't forget, hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. If you know anybody that has this plant, please feel free to share this video with them. That always does me a lot of good and helps me out tremendously. Until next time guys, don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.